afternoon. I'd like to call the August 11th, 2020 work study session meeting to order. I'd like to point out that this meeting is being hosted through live stream on the city's website and by teleconference for public comment. To accommodate public comment during this meeting, we've made temporary changes to the agenda that were necessitated to comply with COVID-19 directives. Deputy City Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Percival?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa? Mayor Brown?
Here.
Thank you.
We'll now move to the public comment period. Deputy City Clerk, were there any electronic comments submitted to be read aloud for this work study session?
Yes, Mayor, there was one comment submitted by Patricia Ann Gregory. States the CAPR presents an inaccurate picture of Hemet's financial health. Both the financial director and the city manager have attempted to obfuscate the city's actual status. The city manager attempts to mislead the citizens of Hemet to think that actual corrections are being made. The only reason for a surplus is due solely to Measure U. I have requested and received actual Measure U information that differs from the city manager's dire predictions due to COVID. Measure U for the current fiscal year has already exceeded $10 million, with the month not yet reported. There is no severe downside due to COVID, as previously alleged, and certainly no reason to remove a fire engine from the east side of Hemet. The city manager has an ethical duty to carry out the policies set by the city council. Measure U should only be used for the enhancement of public safety. Although the mayor and Councilwoman Krupa are backtracking on their promises, two council members, Meyer and Percival, have shown their integrity by voting against the current budget that removes even more money from Measure U. The failure of both the mayor and council member Krupa is even more startling, as they seem to think that their previous promises can simply be changed on a whim. The citizens of Hemet deserve better than the lack of truth and transparency that comes from some of its government's officials. It's time for a change. End of comment. There are no other electronic comments submitted.
Okay, are there any members of the public participating through teleconference who would like to comment on the work study?
There's one member on the line. I've unmuted.
Do you have somebody on the teleconference and speak? If there's someone on the teleconference that wishes to comment on the work study session item, could you please acknowledge? Okay, well, hearing no response, we'll go forward with the work study.
Okay, before we get started, I wanted to make a couple notes for the mayor and the council. I'd like to start off by saying that this was initially scheduled for the July 28th, 2020 council meeting. About 30 minutes before the meeting, I was made aware of a discrepancy. I immediately looked into it, and we determined that there was, in fact, a deviation. While we could have continued the work study as we had the answer prior to the start of the work study, it was important to have a corrected worksheet for the council and the public. I take my job very seriously, and it is up to me to ensure that you and the public have correct information at all times. Mistakes and errors do happen. However, we must do our part in ensuring we minimize errors as much as feasibly possible. I should note that none of the deviations have an impact on the overall net position of the city, and we do not change, and it does not change the financial position of the city of Hemet. And I'll let Lorena get into those items a little bit later. I should note that it is a standard practice for government agencies to receive a copy of the CAPR, which you have before you tonight, and to allow for discussion regarding this topic. It should be noted that we have found only one other instance besides 2019 in the last 10 years where the council formally received the presentation on the CAPR. This occurred on January 13th, 2015, and the council received and filed the CAFR from fiscal year 2013-2014. It is my intent, just as I did in 2019, to bring the CAFR to the mayor and council every year and present it to the council and the community. I believe that is transparency, and I believe it is what this community deserves, and it is what the council should expect from any and all city managers. Because the community has not grown accustomed to this practice, we are identifying tools, resources, and useful information that can help the public understand the key points of a CAFR, the items to look for, and what is included in the document. This will be from an independent third party, and we hope to help educate the public on what this all means for the community moving forward. So with that being said, I will go ahead and hand it over to Lorena, who is available by phone, to kick off the presentation and move forward from here.
Mayor, I have a comment before we start. We have gone over the CAFR before every single year since I've been on council. So I don't know if that's what you're saying. We've had presentations.
We didn't have an instance of it being received in file besides last year.
So we went over it, we just didn't receive in file, is what you're saying?
So we did a search, and that's essentially what we found.
No, I'm asking, but you're saying it's about the receive and file. It's not that we haven't gone over the CAFR before in public.
I'll defer to Clay.
So I did do a search over the past 10 years, and the only action I did see from receive and file was from 2015 and 2019, and then for this year.
Okay, so but you're not saying that we didn't receive it in public, because the PUN group has been here and gone over the CAFR before.
They have been posted online, I believe.
I just want to make sure. Well, and we've gone over it in meetings, even though we may not have received and filed.
Correct.
You know that. All right, I was just clarifying. Thank you.
Lorena, are you on the line? Lorena, are you on the line? Hope it doesn't have to go through the spectrum. They're working.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little more volume.
Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you. We're trying to get a little bit more volume, Lorena.
Okay.
Lorena, do you mind talking so we can figure out which mic you're on?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Okay, apparently we have all the volume that we can get, so just speak up as loudly as you can, Lorena.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. If you do need me to speak up louder, please let me know, and I will do my best. We're here tonight to go over the fiscal year 18-19 CAFR that was completed by an independent auditor, the Poon Group. And Ken Poon is here tonight to present the auditor's portion of the audit. And then once his presentation is done, I will go over some of the key points in the audit, go over the discrepancies that were found, and some of the information that is found in the CAFR that can be useful to the community. So with that, I will turn it over to Ken.
Thank you so much, Lorena. Can everybody hear me clearly here?
I do.
Okay, so let's get the presentation going. Tiffany, are you there to load the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, it's ready to go.
Okay. I haven't seen the presentation here, but that's okay. So, first off, good evening, Mayor and member of the City Council. Once again, my name is Ken Poon. I'm the engagement partner for the audit of the City of Hamlet for the fiscal year end June 30, 2019, and we have completed our report back in June and issued the CAFR as of June 16 of the 2020. So today it's going through the presentation is what we call the communications with those charged with governance. Basically, we determined this council and management to be those what we call those charged with governance to take a look at the financial statement and provide the directions to management to perform their work. So we were engaged by the city to perform a couple things. Next slide. We were engaged by the city to perform a couple things. One is the audit of the city's comprehensive annual financial report. Basically, within that report, we are issuing the report on financial statement and the report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. And also at the same time, the city has spent more than $750,000 in federal expenditure, so therefore a single audit is required. And on top of the report on the financial statement, we do actually issue our report on compliance over the major federal program, the schedule of expenditure of federal award, and the internal control over compliance in accordance with the 2 CFR 200. This is not an auditing standard. This is a federal law that we all need to comply, and this is what we call the Single Audit Act or the Uniform Guidance Audit. Next slide, please. So we'd like to go over our responsibility of, as the auditor in accordance with the professional standard. When I'm saying the professional standard, that means is the AICPA generally accepted auditing standard, and then also the government auditing standard issued by the Government Accountability Office. What we are required to perform, what we are required under the professional standard, we are required to perform the audit in accordance with the generally accepted auditing standard in the United States, and then also the standard applicable to the financial audit contained in the government auditing standard. We are required to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement, whether due to fraud or errors. We consider the internal control over financial reporting solely for the purpose of determining our audit procedures and not to provide any assurance on the effectiveness of such internal control. And last but not least is to express our opinion on the different opinions unit, basically including the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the city's financial statement. Next slide, please. Couple of the things that we would like to communicate with you in terms of our standard. One, first off, is our independence. We need to state independence in mind and in appearance, but also at the same time, while we are performing non-audit service to the city, we need to take independence a lot more. We need to look at independence a lot more closely, because some of these independent service may create a threat to our independence. So the city also engaged us to perform the non-audit service, which includes the preparation of the financial statement and the assistance in the GASB 68 and 75 journal entries. The firm actually did follow the independent conceptual framework. Basically, we need to identify the risk, evaluate the threats to the independence, and then also applying any safeguard that we can apply so that we can reduce the threat to independence to an acceptable level. And since we actually have the capability and identify that the city do have the designated person who have the skill, knowledge, and experience that will be able to oversee our services, and then also when applying the safeguard, which we do have a third party, which is another partner, not including in our engagement team, to review the service that is performed by engagement team. The firm concludes that the risks were reduced to an acceptable level and our independence is not impaired. Regarding significant accounting policy, the city also adopted the GASB statement number 83 during the fiscal year end June 30, 2019, regarding certain asset retirement obligations, and GASB 88 regarding certain disclosure relating to debt, including direct borrowing and direct placement. And none of these actually have any financial impact to your financial statement. That one of the things, like regarding the GASB 83, we did not identify any asset that is retired that will create a liability for the city. And then also 88 is only enhancing the disclosure in the relating to debt. So basically those two new GASB pronouncement has no impact to your financial position as of June 30, 2019. Next slide. We do know that accounting estimate actually is being used in the financial statement. A couple of the significant accounting estimates that is used, including the investment regarding the fair market values being used for your investment, the depreciation on capital assets, and then also the net pension liabilities and the net other post-employment benefit liabilities, also heavily relying on the calculation and the assumption being made by the actuary, which is another independent third party to calculate those. And the city actually do incorporate this estimate in your financial statement. There are certain sensitive disclosure in the financial statement, because the financial statement is not only about the numbers. So basically, we highly recommend you to pay a little bit more attention to the disclosure in the financial statement, which include the summary of significant accounting policy, which I'm going through that in a later presentation. The city's employee benefit plans. Basically, the city is a participant of CalPERS miscellaneous and the safety plan. So there are, due to the implementation of the GASB 68 about like 4 years ago, there are a lot of disclosure regarding those two plans, and then also you can understand all the assumptions made by the actuary, all disclosed in the notes to the financial statement. The other post-employment benefit plan basically is GASB statement number 75, which was actually adopted in your 2018 financial statement. So this is the second year that the city adopted. There are certain individual fund disclosure talking about some deficit fund balance, and there are some required disclosure to be disclosed in the notes. Certain commitment and contingency, and last but not least is the subsequent event note disclosure. Next slide, please. Misstatement, management has corrected all the misstatement that was noted in the audit, and then also a copy of all the corrections of the misstatement are presented in the management representation letter, which the city do have a copy on it. We did not encounter any difficulty in dealing with management. We do not have any disagreement with management in terms of the audit procedures and accounting principle that is being utilized by the city during the course of the audit. And last but not least, and once in a while, the city may seek a second opinion from another CPA or another consultant. And during this fiscal year, we were not aware of, and to the best of our knowledge, we were not aware of the city actually seeking a second opinion regarding the auditing and accounting matters. So that concludes our auditor's communication. So in the next couple of the slides, we will walk you through the whole entire financial statement. Next slide, please. So for the fiscal year end, June 30, 2019, the city actually did prepare a full comprehensive annual financial report. The comprehensive annual financial report basically divides into three different sections. The first section is introductory section. This is an unaudited section, but that includes a lot of information, pretty good information. That includes the letter of transmittal, which is prepared by the city managers and the director of finance. The GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which states that the city did apply the award for the 2018 CAFR, and the GFOA determined that the city go above and beyond all the GASB disclosure requirements and being transparent and disclose everything included in the CAFR and did meet the GFOA requirements. So kudos to your team, because that is doing something above and beyond and making the financial statement very transparent to the user of the financial statement and all the stakeholders. It does also include the organization chart and then also the principal officials of the city of Hamlet out there. Next slide, please. The main sections in the comprehensive annual financial report and also the sections that we as the auditors focus on is the financial sections. The financial sections basically include the independent auditor's report on the financial statement. It also includes the management discussion and analysis, which is a required supplementary information as required under the GASB statement number 34, which is applied almost like 19 years ago. Even though this document is unaudited, but it does actually provide a lot of management discussion on the differences between fiscal year 2018 and then also fiscal year end 2019, and then show all the and explaining the major variances and what's going on in narrative form, so that instead of just reading the financial statement number. So even this is an unaudited number, but this is a high-level discussion made by management, and then also perform the analysis on the 2 years financial operations. Our focus as the auditor is always in the basic financial statement. So the basic financial statement includes a couple of things. The government-wide financial statement, which is a consolidated financial statement of the city as a whole. The government-wide financial statement basically breaks it down into the governmental activities, which includes the general fund, the special revenue fund, the debt service fund, the capital projects fund, and then also the internal service fund, and then consolidated into one column and presented as the governmental activities. In your enterprise activities, you do actually show all the business type of the enterprise fund in and consolidate it into one column. So since you only have the water enterprise fund, so basically the business type activities fully reflect what the water enterprise fund looks like. The fund financial statement is basically what you adopt the budget on. Basically include the governmental fund type, the proprietary fund type, and then also the fiduciary fund type. Included in the basic financial statement, there are also nooks to the basic financial statement. As I said earlier, the financial statement is not only about the numbers. There is a lot of disclosure, a lot of background information, the assumption being used by the city, that are all disclosed in the notes to the basic financial statement. The required supplementary information is required something back in 34 that disclosed the budget and actual information for the general fund and all the major special revenue fund. And then also the pension and OPEB information are all included in the required supplementary information. The supplementary information that includes everything other than what we call major, and you can see the individual fund made information that is considered non-major, and it's all grouped into one column in the governmental fund financial statement. So you can find out all the details about the individual fund that's considered non-major, and then also the internal service fund are all like split it up individually, are included in the supplementary information. Last but not least, next slide, which is going into the statistical sections. And the statistical section is followed under GASB statement number 44, and the statistical, which is what I call go above and beyond as required by GFOA. This section actually shows a 10-year trend analysis on the 5 different categories. One is including the financial trend. Second is the revenue capacity. Third, debt capacity. The fourth is the demographic and economic information. And the fifth one is the operating information for the city. So basically, the last piece, like the last sections, even though this is unaudited, but most of the numbers such as the financial trend, the revenue capacity, and the debt capacity, most of the financial statement number are pulled into this schedule, and you can see a 10-year trend in this section. Next slide. So before I actually jump into the CAFRs itself, wanting to give you the highlight of the audit results. So as of and for the fiscal year end June 30, 2019, under the financial statement audit, we are able to issue an unmodified opinions for all opinions units, basically including the unmodified opinion on the governmental activities, the unmodified opinions for the business type activities, the unmodified opinions on the general fund, the unmodified opinion on the sewer and storm drain fund, the unmodified opinion on the water fund, and then everything, the aggregate information, that is all the non-major fund, the internal service fund are all aggregate, and then the fiduciary fund are all in aggregate as one opinion unit. It's also unmodified opinion. So this is the best opinion that the city can get, which means that the financial statements are fairly present in all material respect. The financial disclosure are all meeting the criteria as set forth under the GASB statement. The estimates are reasonable, and we did not identify any issues with the numbers and disclosure in the financial statement. So also, because we are required to perform the audit under the government auditing standard, we are required to report to you that there are a couple of material weaknesses, one material weakness that we identified, and then 2 significant deficiencies identified. However, we are able to get our arms around with this internal control deficiency and do substantive testing to make sure that we are comfortable with the numbers. We can get around and still be able to issue our unmodified opinions for the CAFR. we did not identify any non-compliance issue regarding to the that is material to the financial statement. We do have, like as I said, we do identify one material weaknesses, which is the accounting policy and procedures. This is a carryover from prior year that can go through and elaborate it, and the city lacks formal policy and procedures. Although the city has informal policy, the city should establish a formal and comprehensive policy approved by the City Council to provide detailed guidance to employees and management to the city. This is a best practice to the for all governmental agencies, and accounting policy and procedures would aid your your finance team in the city by providing training for your accounting personnel, communicating and providing a source of reference to approved policy, and maintaining consistency of recording financial transactions. The reason behind that you don't have a full accounting policy is you don't have enough sufficient staff resource to develop that accounting policy and procedures as of this point. Next slide, which is 2019-002 regarding your deficit identified in your internal service fund. The condition here, we identified the two of the funds you have major deficit. One is the administrative service fund of $7.3 million, and then also the liability insurance fund, which is $470,000. Most of these times, like a lot of time, like when the deficit, let me go back a little bit, the deficits actually create because of the claims liabilities and the pension and OPEB liabilities being recorded to the internal service fund. One of the things that the city is not doing, and also a lot of time when you budget these amounts, is really based on experience. And initially, when GASB 68 and GASB 75 first implemented, the city has not considered initial when it first implemented to the city's financial statement. The city did not take into consideration of the beginning impact to the net position. That's why it causes the deficit into those funds. And one of the criteria under GASB statement number 34, you need to also consider to recover full cost to provide the goods and service, and not to park the deficit in your internal service fund there. So we highly recommend a couple of things that will work with city management to address the deficit position in those two funds, and hopefully eventually one day we can reduce and absorb the costs from the other funds. So the deficit in the internal service fund are caused by a couple of things. The internal service fund are to be accounted for on a full accrual basis or cost in reimbursement basis. The internal service fund has historically budgeted revenue and projected expenditure on a cash basis. That was the reason why you have a deficit in there. The timing of the litigation being settled near the end of the fiscal year, and the implementation of GASB 68 and 75, and that was the reason that causes those two funds into a deficit position. And last, which is the internal control over bank reconciliation, and we highly recommend that the bank reconciliation should be all keep up and should be performed within a short period of time after the month-end close. And when we perform the performance of the walkthrough, basically our internal control evaluation back in August, we note that there is significant delay in performing the bank reconciliation. January 2019 was prepared while it was not finalized, and then the bank reconciliation had a material variances between the reconciliation and the balance in the general ledger. The fixed asset schedule was also not available for the auditors to review until January. So that is a major delay in the reconciliation process, and whatever the reconciliation best practice is always within a 1 month. At max, you can actually go to 2 months in reconciling your bank, and then also the fixed asset schedule should be available like shortly thereafter, because you should actually reconcile the capital outlay and then determine what capital asset needs to be capitalized shortly after the year end. The causes of the issue was the turnover in the finance department over last year resulted in the delay in the bank reconciliation and the fixed asset schedule, and there was an inadequate review over the year-end closing process too. So those are the major issue that we identified during our audit. And I noticed that, like, as of this point, based on my conversation with Lorena, which is the director of finance here, the bank reconciliation is all caught up as of this point. So that will be reviewed during this fiscal year audit. So now I would like to turn to the comprehensive annual financial report as what I did in the past, like last year, to walk you through the financial statement on sections by section, so that you can have a full understanding of where the numbers goes and make you understanding of the whole entire report. But before I move on to the financial statement, is there any questions that I need to answer?
So members have any questions of Kenneth at this point? On what he's presented so far?
I've got one real quick. You had mentioned about the not having a comprehensive policy that should be approved by council. Do you have cities or know of cities that do have those comprehensive policies in place that we could take a look at? That might be an easy way for us to adopt. But if David, if you have those, maybe you could give us a list of those cities.
Yes, we do have a lot of cities do have a comprehensive accounting policy. So I highly recommend, even though I can send it to the city management for you to reference, but this policy is actually should be tailor-made for the city yourself, and then depending on the infrastructure that you have, the number of personnel. So I would like I'm more than happy to share the policy to the city, but highly recommend your management team to take a look at it and tailor-make that for the city.
I would appreciate that, and I think that's probably going to be the way that we would be able to get around not having the resources, the staff resources available to come up with that on our own when it's already there from other cities. So thank you.
Our city manager wants to comment on this.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Percival, that's one of the things that I've directed the finance director to draft up already. And so as Ken alluded to, they will be tailor-made to our city. And I'm expecting to have a draft to review in the next couple of months. And so we are working through that, and we are looking at that. Lorena will talk about that in her presentation that comes a little bit after this one, but it is on our radar, Councilmember.
All right.
Mr. Pun, do you think that our city looks healthy to you?
Well, let's take a look at the financial statement, which will be which will be looking at it as the next couple of my presentation, because I plan on walking you through the whole entire financial statement so that you can see, and I can elaborate the financial health for the city.
All right, we'll wait and ask that then later. I'm just going to put this out here before I start so that you understand my frustration. I think that this is very frustrating. I feel like this is a joke, and the number of errors that I found. and I don't even have full access. I don't have any access except what I request. And then you, in your report, it was dated June 16th, 2020. And my question for you, is it common to make changes to the audited numbers after that report is put out? Changes that were made since 2 weeks ago when it was posted publicly? Is that standard?
I'm sorry for the frustration, but we identified one area that will cause a reclassification because it was basically that was part of our mistake to map the restricted into different line item, and my apologies to not identify early in the before we issue. But because this is a minor reclassification and didn't impact the net position for the city, so that's why we have still dated the as of June 16 of 2020, and because we did not apply any additional audit procedures to the numbers, it's just a mismap within the financial statement, and I do apologize for that.
Mismapping $4.9 million is kind of big in my book. Achievement of excellence. With all the mismapping, can you imagine what we would find if we actually had full access? And how can you justify
I'm
this?
sorry, there's only one mismap in the financial statement as we identified, and we are taking appropriate actions with management and to correct those so that now you do have the financial statement. The total restriction has not been changed. The total net position has not been changed. All the assets, all the liabilities are properly reflected in these financial statements.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, that you're calling this one mismapping. I'm calling it 4.9 million mismappings because those are dollars that were in the wrong place. Now, then at 5:51, just today, you indeed just said, didn't find any issues with the numbers. Can you explain yourself with that? Because I found some.
Well, that means we are looking at all the numbers, testing looking at your internal control, and then determine all the audit procedures to validate the numbers. The financial statement is still rests with the city, and also we as a CPA firm, we are looking at things that are material mistake in the financial statement. I do apologize for that one mistake that we made and not classifying properly on the government-wide financial statement, but in the general fund, it was properly classified, and that is one of the mismaps that we did, and I do apologize for those, and now it's being corrected.
Now, your justification for some of our inaccuracies or lack of procedures, even though we had the same issues last year, you said that there's not enough resources to complete jobs. Are you aware that we just voted 3-2 to give raises and promotions in that department? Or that's not part of your audit?
You know what? I'm not aware of the additional resource.
Okay. You also said some cash bases, some not. Can you explain that?
Well, going back to the internal service fund, the reason for when you do your budget is basically based on the experience and then also based on the cash outflow that you did on the liability side, and have not considered all the assumption that was being made by the actuary, and this is pretty common when GASB 68 and GASB 75 first implemented, and this is really common in the industry where you only can budget what you know, and without identifying and the budgeting the net pension and OPEB liability and how much that you paid out is really determined based on the actuarial study that is given by CalPERS and your OPEB actuaries.
Okay.
So those are not being reflected properly because those are more of a funding basis, and that's how normally city will budget based on the funding basis. But our financial report is based on a full accrual basis of accounting, and also internal service fund is actually determined and use it as a cost allocation. So that's why when you're actually having a full accrual basis financial statement in those funds, you need to determine and using full accrual basis in as your budgeting tool instead of using a funding basis like budgetary tools.
I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that and that we're thinking the same way. You said the bank reconciliations you didn't get until January, and when did you ask for them? I missed that when you were talking.
We basically asked for it like at the very, very beginning. Is actually last August when we present the PPC, the prepared by client listing. So the request has been like even before we like shortly after the year-end closing.
Okay, and then the other thing is I keep hearing because of turnover, so maybe staff can go over that with us at some point. Have you gotten to page 9, or has that considered talked about yet or not? My question is
no, basically I'm going to go through that page by page with you guys.
All right. Well, my question, and I'll just ask it now so you can address it when you get there, but on page 9, the balance for 2018 is not the same as the CAFR that we were presented last year that is posted online. And so usually the ending balance is the beginning balance, you know. So if you could address that when you get to it. There's about $200,000 missing.
Okay.
Do you have any questions? Okay. Proceed ahead, Gav.
Sure, no problem. So let's go through the comprehensive annual financial report. As I said earlier, this is a comprehensive annual financial report, which is go above and beyond the minimum gas fee requirements. So basically, the report is actually divided into 3 sections. The first section is the introductory section. Basically, started off with the transmittal letter. This is the letter prepared by management team, Lorena, which is the finance director, which talks about the city. Basically, this includes the profile to the city of Hammett, the economic condition and outlook, your long-term financial planning goal, and then also the award and acknowledgement that is presented in these transmittal letter. So on page 9, which is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, basically the city did participate into the GFA, the certificate program, and this is actually relating to the June 30, 2018 financial statement. And congratulations to the city. Basically, the city actually do meet all the requirements as stated under the GFOA guideline, and present the comprehensive annual financial report for 2018. So that's why you do have the certificate there. And then also on page 10, which is shown the organization chart of the city. And then also page 11, which is the principal official of the city of Hammett as of June 30, 2019. Going into the financial section, the first item in the in the financial sections is our independent auditor's report on the financial statement. So the first paragraph, which state that the scope of the audit, we basically were engaged to perform the audit on the financial statement, basically including the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the City of Hammett as of and for the fiscal year end June 30, 2019, and the related notes to the basic financial statement, which collectively calling the city's basic financial statement. It does actually spell out your responsibility and our responsibility. Since I already go through my responsibility in my presentation, we are going through your responsibility as management. You are fully responsible for these financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principle. You also need to establish and maintain proper internal control, which include the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and the fair presentation of these financial statements. So basically, you do need to set that up. We, as the auditor, we follow perform the audit in accordance with the AICPA generally accepted auditing standard, and then also the standard applicable to the government auditing standard. As I said, we are not here to just audit the internal control and express our opinion. We just considered the internal control and design our audit procedures surrounding those. So that's why we are not here to issue an opinion on the internal control. However, we do issue an internal control over financial reporting to identify any deficiency that we have, which I've already gone through the three internal control issues that we identified. We believe that the audit evidence that we collect are sufficient and appropriate to provide the basis for our opinion. Next page, on page 2, which started off with our opinion, basically spelled it out in my summary of audit results that spelled it out, saying that we do issue an unmodified opinions for all opinions unit, and we are here to that state that we provide reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, on these financial statements. We do spell out our responsibility for the required supplementary information, which include the MD&A, the management discussion and analysis, the budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund and the sewer and storm drain fund, and then also the schedule of change in net pension liabilities, the schedule of contribution for pension, and then also the schedule of change in net post-employment, other post-employment benefit liability, and the schedule of contribution for the OPEB are all considered required supplementary information, and those are the required schedule by the Governmental Accounting Standard Board. We do actually look at the information and compare to the underlying accounting records, underlying supporting document. However, we do not provide any assurance on the information because of limited procedures that we perform on these schedule. The other information, which include the introductory sections, the combining and individual non-major fund information, the schedule of revenue and expenditure and change in fund balance, which is included in budget and actual, and then also the statistical section is only provided for additional analysis. And because of the limited procedures that we perform on the introductory section and statistical section, we do not express our opinion on those two sections. However, we do perform audit procedures on the combining and individual major fund financial statement and the schedule of revenue, expenditure, and change in fund balance. So that's why we issue an unmodified opinion in relation to the basic financial statement as a whole. You do see on page 3 the other reporting requirements by the government auditing standard. So that's why you also see the internal control over financial reporting, which include in your single audit report and spell out and talk about the internal control deficiency, which I explained it in my presentation. starting on page 5 to page 13, this is the management discussion and analysis, which is also a required supplementary information under GASB statement number 34. The first page on page 5 actually provide an overview of the financial statement and kind of explaining to the user what is included in these financial statements. On page 6, basically, it's a table and kind of explaining the scope of the statement and where you can and the statement including like a statement of net position or statement of activities and what basis of accounting and measurement focus that are being used in each type of the financial statement, so that you can understand and what accounting bases are being used in those statements. So page 7, going through in detail and having a more explanation of what is a government-wide financial statement, and then also the fund financial statement and explaining what major funds are included in these financial statements. And on page 8 on top, basically we do have a fiduciary responsibility for which is the fiduciary fund that is being accounted for by the city. So you do see the responsibility and what type of control that you have in the fiduciary fund. Starting on page 8, like the main majority of the page, you see a condensed financial statement on the government-wide statement of net position. This is a point-in-time condensed financial statement as of June 30, 2019, compared 2019 to 2018. And as you can see, at the end of June 30, 2019, you do see a total net position for the governmental activities of $273 million, and compared to 2018, $272 million. And then also for business type activities, $5.8 million compared to 2018, 3.4 for net position. So at the end of the day, you do have close out for June 30, 2019 for total of $279 million. And page 9, you do see the income statement. So total revenue for the governmental activities, $71.7 million compared to 2018, $66.4 million for the governmental activities. And then business type activities, $11.6 million to 2018, $10.6 million. So